Hi, everyone. Megan here from Romance by the Book with the lovely Marielle.
Hello.
And this is our final week for August. We read our throwback pick, one of Marielle's faves, Where Dreams
Yeah.
Begin by Lisa Kleypas.
Yep. This is the infamous Zachary Bronson and
Yes.
Lady Helen Taylor. And when we left off, they had a moment and then they were like, let's pretend nothing's
She was
happened.
like, let's pretend. And he was like, I'll try.
So we start chapter 13 with him trying, which basically means he is staying away
Yeah.
100% of the time. And
And she
Holly's like,
misses him 100% of the time, which
yeah,
she did not anticipate for some reason, but I was like, come on, honey.
I knew. Yeah, she was very like, "Oh, he keeps leaving. He's gone in the morning. He's
Yeah.
bleary-eyed." She's like noticing every like new little wrinkle in the corner of his
Hmm.
eye. Um, but he's not hanging out, and she hates it. The one good thing that is happening is that um Mr. Jason Summers, who's the architect, who's her cousin,
Yeah.
is coming. He's among Elizabeth's favorite, or many suitors, but he is her
Yes.
favorite. And she happens to see a moment between them that's super sweet, and I'm glad we got to see it too.
Yes.
She's teasing him, telling him that he's like too short for her.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like, I'm taller than you. Let's measure. But then they're up close, and they're
Right.
whispering in their ear,
Yep.
and and Holly's just like, oh,
She's
better
like,
go.
"Oh, I gotta go."
Um, so it's sweet to see that. But then she goes off she's, off in the garden and whatever, and she's reading in this um I don't know, garden house. They have like a
I
little
I
cabin
figured
out
it
there.
I pictured it like a pergola, except for, like, a little bit more enclosed than that, basically, but still
I
pretty much
mean,
like an
it's all
outbuilding.
closed in, but
Yeah.
outside, yeah. She's sitting there reading, and all of a sudden, in comes Zachary Bronson, soaking wet. Somebody sent him because it's like storming and she's
She
out.
didn't even notice. I get
No,
that way too
must
when
have
I'm
been a
reading.
good book. Yeah. It's kind of fun though. He shows up and he's just like, "All right, we better go back." And she's like, "Why? It's probably the ground is probably soaking wet. There's thunder. I'm sure." She says like, "I'm sure it'll ease up soon." And then like the sky darkens and like thunder flashes, and it's like, "Oh." They he's
He's like,
like,
"I can't be alone with you. We gotta go."
for
Yeah,
5 minutes.
yeah,
He's like, 5 minutes is already like, no.
yeah.
But the thing is, she was watching him. Like when he came in, he's trying to close the umbrella. And the way it's described, it's like she is drinking him in because she is like, his hair, his eyelashes, the brown of his eyes. I'm like, how are you even seeing all
She
this?
missed him, and that's the first she's seeing of him, and she is into it. Yeah.
Yeah, so she does. Uh, she has a asked for a kinky,
Oh,
and then
yeah, to,
she
like
starts patting his face, and he gets very still and very like focused in on what is this?
mhm.
And this lady is like, "What do you mean you can't hang out with me, pet pet?" And
Talk about mixed messages.
he tells her like, "If we stay here,
It's going
I
down for
mean,
real.
yeah." And he puts his coat around her because he's like, "Come on,
Yep, let's go.
let's go."
Yeah.
And she takes that coat off, and she reaches up and like gets all close up with him and pulls off his cravat and starts undoing his shirt. And I'm like, Lady Holland Taylor.
She's
So,
she can't help herself, but meanwhile, she can't stick with one idea either. She keeps pushing and pulling him. It's a lot.
so they do have
They
the
do finally
whole
have
full
sex.
on sex because before they kissed. One time was like strangers in the dark, and
Right.
then one time on purpose, and she was like, "Ooh, it never happened."
Yep.
But now it's like
They have
they are
done it.
fully having sex, and
Yep.
he is so sweet. He's so sweet. And she is feeling things that she never felt before. She says, like, well, husbands, I guess, are supposed to not encourage their wives to feel like horny things, which
Yeah, which
so
is
sad.
bullshit.
She's like, I guess nobody told him not to dirty talk in my ear and
Nope.
make me have an orgasm. But anyway,
Yeah. First ever orgasm. Even and of course he realizes it because of how like shook it makes her. And he's like, "So that never happened with your husband?" And she was like, "No."
he
Like,
did
I
what he
didn't
was
even know
he
that was
read
a
the
thing.
script and he did what he
Yeah.
was supposed to do.
Yeah. And it's like and it's made clear many times, like, she loved her husband and she enjoyed sex with him, but clearly she never knew what she was missing until she did.
Yeah. And I mean that is what she says to him. She's kind of
Yeah.
like, I I it was
I didn't
nice.
know what I was
She
missing.
was like, it was nice.
Yeah.
Very it was very sweet.
Yeah.
Just wasn't all this.
Didn't know it could be all this. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's just like amazing. We're together now. And
And
she
she's
is
like,
like,
"Whoop.
no.
No, not only no, but now I have to leave." And
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, shit. Like, this is the thing I've been trying to avoid this entire time," which is why they haven't done it yet, because he knew that she would wanna leave as soon as they did. And
Yes.
sure enough.
And the thing is, yeah, it is the thing that interestingly, and I do love when authors can do this to me, that they've been telling me all along. And then when it happens, I'm like, but no.
What? Yeah.
And it was this exact thing. That from
Yeah.
the beginning, she's been like, if we start
If you do it,
anything
I'm gonna have to
hanky
leave.
panky, I'm out.
Yep.
And he's been like, I could seduce her, but if I do, she's leaving.
Yep.
And I thought but clearly they're in love, and that's the
Yeah.
thing that, like, he sees it in her
Yeah.
too, that
Yes.
he says well, she said something about, like, everything's so complicated still, and he's like, "Wait a minute, are you gonna marry that other guy?"
Right, like, you're still thinking about doing that? Yeah.
Like, he says to her, like, "This this mother" anyway, he's just like, he has gotten everything, like, handed to him from generations of whatever, and I've had to, like, beg
Fight and
and
scrape.
scrape and force my like everything I've ever had. And he was like, I am not gonna bully her into
Right,
being
like, I could make her
she's
do what
gonna
I
have to
want,
choose me.
but I don't wanna do that. Yeah, she needs to fight for me for once. Yeah.
Yes. But also he's super upset and
Yeah, of
she's like
course.
she's like, please be kind. And he's like, I cannot be a gentleman about this. Also, he's mad. So she's just kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'll get everything in order. And he says, if you leave here, like, do not come back. I don't give
Yeah,
second chances.
yeah.
And she's real sad about
Well,
it.
and at some point, doesn't he call her a coward? Like, he's, like,
Yes.
basically like, "I didn't know I out of all the times I've known you and everything that we've been through, like, I never thought you were a coward. Like, this is messed up."
Yeah,
And he, of
he
course
does
and that's
tell
when
her.
she's like, "Yeah, that's mean." And he's like,
Well,
"So?"
because she says she doesn't know how she's gonna tell Rose. And
Yeah,
he was like, what? That her mother's like being a coward. And it was like, oh.
yeah,
But it's not
she is.
wrong. And the truth
Yeah,
is that like she I feel like Lisa Kleypas built this moment really well because he has been he is an impatient man and he is a man who gets what he wants.
mhm,
And he has tried so hard and been so good, like so good,
yep,
trying to make sure that he like let her kind of like he didn't overstep
right,
what her boundaries were or like force her into anything. Um and she keeps like tugging him and he for him to be like, no, like you need to make this choice. And also like I can't be here like I'm not gonna be here to like pretend like see you off and pretend like
yeah, and
everything's
pretend like
fine.
nothing's wrong between us. Yeah,
So he's like, I'm skedaddling.
mhm.
And she's also skedaddling.
Well, right, because of course it's gonna take her a couple days to, like, pack up all her stuff and everything, and he's planning to, like, super not be there when that happens because he cannot deal with that.
Yeah. So in the meantime, he does go like she tries to tell Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is like, oh no, have I been a terrible student? And it's like, no, that's not it.
Yeah, and of course the
Paula, his
mom,
mom,
she knows.
she
She
knows.
mama knows, yeah.
Um, and she's just kind of like, it's fine. We're not gonna make this any harder than it
Yeah,
needs to be. Um, and then she tells Rose, Rose is not okay.
No.
Rose is like, "You
She's
said
like,
we're
"You
staying
can go
here."
back and I'll stay here." That's what she says to her.
Sounds like a kid,
Yeah,
like
oh, yeah,
perfect kid logic.
big
Also,
time.
she's just kind of like Holly's trying to be, like, reasonable and like, "You knew it wasn't gonna be forever." She's like, "You said
Right.
we're gonna be here a year. It hasn't been nearly that."
Barely been 4 months.
And
Yeah.
she just, like, takes off, and so Holly is like, "Oh, no." So she kind of tries to get herself together, and in
Mhm.
the meantime, poor Zachary. He's so sad. And he is just
Bad
like
boy.
he is sad and he's just like this sucks and I can't do anything about it and
Mhm.
it sucks. And he starts like packing up his things because he wants to leave ASAP.
Yeah.
And in his office is Rose. And Rose is like, he's just kind of like, "What's wrong? What's wrong, princess?" And so she
Mhm.
tells him, and she's like, "You're gonna miss me terribly." And he almost cries.
And he's like,
And
"Uh-huh."
she's like, "Are you gonna cry?" And he's just like, "No." He says, "Only a little on the
Only on
inside."
the inside. So
Anyway,
sweet.
this girl gives him her favorite button,
The one
and
that
he's
smells like her mom, her perfume
mhm.
button.
She's like,
Yeah.
"You smell it, it'll make you feel better." And he's just like, "Oh, I don't
It
make
will
you feel
not make me feel
worse."
better.
But, yeah. So he also goes when he sees, uh Holly and Rose like go off
Off
outside. He
out for a
goes
walk,
and
yeah.
talks to Maud, his Rose's sorry, Holly's lady's maid, gives her money and says, if anything,
If they
if
need
Holly
me,
ever
come and
needs
get me.
anything.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You don't have to give me money for that," but he does
Yeah.
anyway. And in the process, he sees the picture
It's
of
like a little
George,
miniature of George.
of the saintly George Taylor.
Yes. And
And
it really has an interesting effect too because
mhm,
he he's been feeling so many jealous feelings and like hating this guy and he was just a kid. Like he looks at him and he's like, "Oh my God, he was just a kid. Like he didn't even really get to live. Like that
yeah.
sucks." You know? Like
He's
it kind
like
of
his
makes him
sideburns are like peach fuzz. He's kind of
yeah,
like he must have just been like 24. He's not,
yeah,
he's looking at him and he's like, I always thought about him as like a contemporary, but
right.
really
He
he's a
wasn't.
baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he also asks Maud like, "Does she look at this a lot?" And Maud's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't seen her pull it out since we've been here."
She's like, it was kind of dusty actually.
Yeah, uh-huh, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's right."
Uh-huh. But regardless of how little she's been looking at that miniature,
It's
she's
still
still
wreaking havoc in her life. Yeah,
and she leaves and she's just like, well, I guess I'm going back to where I started. And
yep,
she it's like she doesn't want to, like she knew when she returned to the Taylors that that might be like her
it
home forever
right,
because she wasn't gonna like hold Ravenhill to that promise,
right.
but also and she's not 100% sure like where he stands on it,
Mhm,
but at the same time she's it like she's kind of like, I know he doesn't love me and I don't love him.
right,
So he, if he wants to like
right.
find an actual wife, like that will be fine.
Well, and when he first comes to call on her at the Taylors and they sort of talk about it, and she kinda says that, like, "What if you fall in love with somebody and I'm literally like a noose around your neck? Like, this is horrible, like, we should not do this." And
Yeah.
he's like, "No, like, I already know that's not gonna happen for me," kind of a thing, and, like
Which made me very much want to have like a book from him.
well, and I sort of wondered if he was in love with George, honestly, that's the super big vibes that I personally got, and I'm sure in
Maybe.
2000, that isn't probably what she was doing, but, like, when they were talking about how close they were and, like, how shattered he was afterward, almost worse than her, it seemed like, and stuff, and then he,
Like
like,
he had to
agreed
leave the country.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
was sort of like, I don't know, that's how I sort of took it, but I'm sure that's just, like, me.
I mean, he was shattered and
Yeah.
and it was like the two of them.
Yeah.
It's like a John Gray. Is that his name? Lord John
Oh,
Gray
Lord John
from
Grey
Outlander.
and Jamie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, so maybe that was, I mean, I could see that
Yeah.
as a like underlying reasons for
Why
why.
he knows for sure that, like, he's never gonna want to marry for love,
Well, and
basically.
he says, like, that he spent 3 years, like, trying to, like, chase his passions and whatever, and he's like, he
Right.
just wants a quiet, like, chill life
Nice, quiet
now.
life. Yeah.
And, yeah, so it's interesting because I
And
feel
they
like
do
he's
have a lot in common in the way that they were brought up, and they have a history together, and they're friends. They love each other in that way, and so he just feels like it'll be fine.
yeah.
And
And
she's
so she's just kind of like, she says, because he is like, I mean, he's kind of ready to make
yeah,
that decision. And she's like, oh, well, I'm not
I'm
ready to
not
make this
ready.
decision.
Yeah,
So he says he will court her and he'll give her time and she can
right.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Um,
And do you know how much time it is, y'all? It's a month. A whole month of her letting this other man court her and trying to fit back into her old life with her old in-laws, knowing that it's 100% wrong. And meanwhile, she is miserable. And guess who else is miserable?
well, she's
Big, big
also like,
time.
the Taylors are very, like, they bring her back into the fold.
Yep.
And she says that it feels very much like, even though they're being very kind to her, it feels very much like they are like, "Aw, you like screwed
Poor
up, and now
thing. We told you
we're here to
so.
fix you."
Yep.
Like,
Hmm.
just like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
didn't. The vibes were
No,
not
I
happening for
agree.
me. But
And also his older brother is a snotty, like bratty piece of trash who's like constantly making her feel bad about her choices.
yeah, well,
And
he's like, "This is why you
she's
need a
super
man,"
nice
and
to
it's
him.
like,
Yeah. She's super nice to him, which he does not deserve.
no,
But yeah, and she at some point she basically is like, this whole thing has been like an ill-fitting shoe. Like trying to go back to this life after like knowing what I know and what I've been through, like this is not gonna work anymore.
yeah.
But
And
she
he
doesn't
has
really want to marry Ravenhill either. So now she's like, what the hell am I gonna do?
as a person who sometimes lives in a time warp, I guess I could see her being like, "Oh shoot, it's been a whole month and this still sucks."
Yeah.
But at one point, I mean, they've been like going out and like doing things,
Right, like
and
riding
it,
horses and doing, whatever. Yeah, mhm.
and it's fine,
It's fine.
but
Well, yeah,
it's
because she
not.
likes him. Like, she likes his company. They were friends. So, like, that part
Mhm.
is all fine. But, like, she doesn't have any kind of feelings for him, and she's not gonna.
No.
And now that
So
she knows what it's like to have those feelings again, it's not easy for her to just be like giving him up for sure.
yeah. So she does eventually decide, like, okay, this is. The other thing is that Holly Taylor is kind of like, "Ugh, I'm gonna have to go find this man and he's gonna be
And beg
so
him to
mad and
forgive
I
me
don't
for being an
even
idiot
know."
and a coward.
It's yeah, and she's also like, I don't even know if he told her he didn't
Right.
give
He
second
told her not to come
chances.
back.
It's not a given.
Yeah.
So in her head, she's like, if I marry Ravenhill, it's like I know the life I'm gonna have.
Right.
If I say no to that, like, I
Don't
don't
know.
know.
Yeah.
So, but she doesn't want to marry Ravenhill. And so she does eventually figure out, like, I'm going to tell him. And she tells him, and
Yep.
he's kind of like, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
But he does not pressure her. He just kind of
No.
tells her, like,
He's very nice, and he is a truly good friend to her and obviously was to her husband too, and yeah, I wouldn't have minded seeing him get a happy ending because he's a really good character.
he is. So they do. Sorry, that's my dog. um, so yeah, she tells him, and then she like lays out her clothes for the next day. She's like, I am going to go in the morning. I'm going to talk to him. It's gonna suck, but I'm gonna do it, and
Yep.
maybe, like, fingers
But
crossed,
then
maybe.
crazy early in the morning, before she can even do anything, Elizabeth shows up, and she is ridden there all by herself. Nobody with her, no groom or anything. And she basically tells her, like, he is a disaster. He's making all of us miserable. He turned away a proposal from Mr. Jason Summers, which Elizabeth loves him. Like, that's who she wants to marry. And Zachary's being insufferable. And she's like, you have to fix it. Like, this is a
Yeah.
nightmare.
She's like, "I don't wanna say it's because of you, but it's because of
But
you."
it's because of you.
Um,
Yes. Hey, Mo.
dog. Anyway, hi. So, yeah, she's just like, I feel like you're the only person who could fix this."
Yeah.
And she's kind of like, "Why did he?" Elizabeth is like, "We're gonna get married regardless."
Yeah.
Like, he already told
But he's
me,
being a
and
jackass about it.
but she's like, I don't wanna, like, lose my whole family over this, and there's
Right.
something, like, he is never sober, he is always a mess, like, and he's mean to everybody,
Yeah.
like, he's just not
Including
being.
me and mom, which is not a thing that has happened before.
No,
Yeah.
and he was never mean to the servants
No.
either, like,
No.
his staff was always like, they were loosey goosey doing whatever they
Right.
wanted, and he didn't
Yeah.
know how to tell them to stop.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like he is not acting like himself. And she then gets kind of worried, but she's like, all right, I will go. But you, ma'am, need to take a someone when it's not safe for you to
Right. It's
ride by
not safe.
yourself.
What if you fall off your horse and you're alone? Like, don't do that.
So Elizabeth is like, I'll go back, but he can't see me, like he can't take me all the way. He's gotta, it's like a kid at school, like leave me down the block and I'll walk
Right.
by
Like, yeah,
myself.
because yeah, she wants to send the guy with her and she's like, he can't see him. So it's take me to the end of the driveway and then I'll go back the rest on my own.
So when Holly goes, she like gets
She
to the
just
front
pulls
door.
up full carriage, knocks on the door. The housekeeper opens it and she's like, it's really good to see you, but I'm so sorry he saw you through the window and he's not accepting visitors.
Yes.
And
And so
she's like, oh, I'm sure.
she's like, okay, well, like I think they do this little dance where
Yes.
Holly's like, how do I get in there
Yeah.
without
She's like, I
her
think
being
I left a few things. It's okay if I just go upstairs, right? And the housekeeper, like, looking
is
relieved, like,
like,
oh, yes,
yeah.
definitely. You could do that for sure.
She's like, we could never keep you from your things.
Yeah.
So she tells her to go up. She's like, do you need an
Do you need help?
escort? She's
Yep.
like, nope. Um, so
So
yeah,
she
she goes up.
walks to his bedroom door and it's cracked open. And she goes inside and he's looking out the window still at the carriage. And he
Like
says,
in his PJs, his
in his
long
PJs,
little
yeah,
robe and his
already holding
feet
brandy. It's
poking
like
out.
10 in the morning or whatever. He says, what did she say? And she goes, she refused to be deterred or something like that.
Yeah,
And he turns around and looks at her and she closes the door. And he's like not having it. He's like, get out.
no, yeah. But also she's nervous because he is very, which he
Stone
had
face.
not been with her before. Like
Yeah.
she could tell what he was thinking or
Yes.
feeling or whatever before.
He is
But
like
he
dead eyes
is
to her now.
so, yeah.
And she's like, oh no,
So
I don't know what to do.
and she gets kind of scared because she does not know like how she's gonna handle this.
Yeah.
She tells him that, like, okay, well, I am here because I made a mistake and
And
I
I love you.
I need you to know this. And she was like, you don't have to talk to me, but hear me out. And she
Yeah.
tells him she loves him. She was scared. She
She was being a coward. He was right
was,
about that. Like,
yeah, and he is like, damn it, like, why did
like
you put us
I
through
could
this?
kill you for putting us through this, I think is
And
something is
she
what he
said,
says.
I wanted to come back sooner, but you said no second chances. And he's like, 1,000 chances, 100,000 chances for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
He's like, I was getting my world destroyed. I didn't really know what I was saying. Like, I
yeah.
didn't mean that, obviously. Yeah.
The thing about this book too is that both of them, when they're angry, they say stuff
Yeah.
and then have to go back and be like, oh, I'm
Be like,
sorry.
oh, that was too much. Yeah.
But she more than him even. Like
Yeah.
that's the only time in the whole book that he's just like, don't, like, if you leave, don't ever come back. He doesn't
Yeah.
mean that,
Of course he doesn't. Yeah.
but she of course was like, oh
She,
shoot, I
he's meant
really,
everything else he's ever said. So she took it at face value. Yeah. And it wasn't until she got up enough gumption to know that she needed to talk to him, even if he wasn't going to be receptive, that she decided to like go against it, basically.
yeah. And so then he's like, all right, well, since you're here, and
And they have sex, and it's great.
and
Super
then
great.
it's great. And then
And then
she's
they
like, wait,
like a lot. They had like all day. And then they go out for like a walk. And then he wants to like go back in and do it again. And she's like, oh no, not until the wedding. And he's like, what?
but no, after that first time, she's like, so I did need to ask you a question about Mr. Jason Summers.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you said no, he wants to marry
And
Elizabeth,
Elizabeth
and
wants to marry him. That's the
and
most
he's
important
nice
part.
and they're in love. And he's like, I was just testing him. Like, I just want to make sure. And she's like, hey, dummy, like your whole family is like,
Is
you
mad at you
just,
right now. Yeah.
anyway. So he's like, all right, fine, I'll tell him.
Yeah.
But he shows up. I mean, but then
Yeah.
she drops the bomb about how they can't have sex together. They
Right.
are planning the wedding. He's like, excellent. We're gonna get married in the biggest church. We're gonna have all the things.
500 guests. Yeah.
And
She's like,
she's like,
no,
no.
sir. She's like, first of all, do you actually want to wait for that? Because I don't. She's like, second of all, I've already been married before. Like, we're not doing that. Third of all, like nobody's gonna come to this wedding. Like, I am like persona non grata now. Like, forget it. And she's like, we're not doing that. And he keeps like he's like, oh, okay, very small wedding, 200 guests then. And she's like, no. You're not listening.
Actually tiny. Um, so he's like, fine, at least it'll be fast. Like,
Yeah,
that's okay.
yeah,
And then so when Jason Summers comes, like he's getting ready to like summon him, and
right.
he shows up and is like, look, I I'm just gonna tell you, because out of courtesy,
Yeah,
that even though you said no, like your sister and I are getting
we're
married.
getting
Like
married. Yeah,
we're gonna elope. It's gonna
yeah.
be, and he's like, oh, okay. You have my blessing. And the guy's like, what? It's a whole mess.
Like, skirt. Yeah.
He's like, all right, I'll go tell Elizabeth. And what does Zachary Bronson do? 1,000 doves for the church. Like, he immediately starts planning a huge extravagant wedding for his
Oh,
sister.
that's yeah, because Jason's like, you can plan whatever kind of wedding you want. Like, I legit do not care. We're just gonna get married and that's it. So yeah, so he's gonna spend all his wild money and for the giant wedding on his sister instead, which is gonna suit everybody just fine.
That Anyway, I thought that was so cute.
Very cute.
Um, in the meantime, Holly's over at the house with the Taylors, and they are not happy.
Uh-uh.
But she's just like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. Bye.
Bye.
Um, and at the wedding, her parents come, which we haven't seen her parents
Yeah,
from the
she
beginning,
mentioned them
but
at the beginning, like about being an earl's daughter and all that, but that was it. We never actually saw them.
yeah, they show up. They're really sweet. Her mom is kind of like, are you gonna be all right? And she,
Yeah,
but when she's like, oh, we love each other and it's great, she's like, all right.
yeah.
So
So
it's
her
really
parents
cute.
come, of course, his mom and sister are there, and Jason, and Rose, and then Ravenhill shows up,
Hmm.
which was so kind. He really is a good guy.
I
And
mean, Zachary Bronson
he's
did
like,
not
"What
like
is
the
he
idea
doing
from the
here?"
first,
And she's like,
but when Holly explained that it was
yeah.
actually
Like
like,
he's doing us a favor, like blessing our marriage basically, as far as everybody else is concerned. And he's
other
like,
people
"Oh,
can't
fine."
stay mad at us if
Right.
he is okay with it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So they're married, it's all great, and here we are thinking things are over. And yet
In fact, at the wedding, when it's like you may kiss the bride and all the thing, Rose says, and they lived happily ever after. And then
Mhm.
you look and you're like, wait,
There's like
this book
10%
is not
left.
over.
What's happening? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was like, "Oh, no, this is not good." So, guess what happens, guys? Long story short, they have this lovely time. Everything is going great. They're really getting to know each other even better and like all hunky dory. And she's
Oh,
realizing
they
that
had sex all the
he,
time
oh yeah,
because
all the time.
she's like, how often? Once a week? And he's like, oh, honey, more than that.
Oh
And
no.
she's just
Yeah.
like, okay.
And
Um,
so, but she's realizing that like all the things that he does for people, the causes that he supports and stuff, mostly he does it quietly because his name has a lot of like baggage attached to it and like doesn't help a lot of times. And so he just like gives money and like steps back basically. And it makes her think about like all the time in her life that she's never done anything for anybody but herself, basically. And she decides to like take up this cause with these other ladies.
Well, and he
But
does practical things, right? Like, he,
yeah,
within his businesses, makes sure that there are things that will benefit people. And
right,
so she decides that she doesn't want to be somebody who just like is on a board and
right.
like sits
She
pretty
wants
and
to
does. She wants
be a
to
part of it.
go and do things. So
So
she does go.
she goes somewhere that he gets so big mad about her going because it's super dangerous. It's like a factory with very bad conditions and like kids working there and like people are have illnesses and it's all kinds of terrible.
I
And
will say that it's in his neighborhood where he grew up, and she's
yeah,
like, I just wanted to help. These people are just like you were, and I just wanted to help them. And he's just like, sure, sure. However, would you have taken like Rose
Rose
there?
there.
And she's like, "Well, no, but also I'm not a kid." And she's like, "No, you're everything to me." He's
Like,
like,
you're my entire life. Like, if something happens to you, I don't know what will happen to me. And
and
then she feels bad, and she's like, "You're right." Like, and he gets her to agree that she won't go anywhere without him, that she wouldn't feel safe bringing Rose.
and when she was mad, again, she said something to him. She said like that he was being a tyrant.
Right,
And
like
then
treating
she
her like
has
a
to think
child.
through that she's like, actually, George would have like never even given me this much. Like he is very
Right, like
lenient.
George would have made me drop out of that group altogether. Like, forget about like just not going to a
Like
place
she wouldn't
anymore.
have been able to
Like,
be part of it to begin with,
yeah,
let
yeah,
alone.
probably.
But he also didn't tell her she couldn't go. He was just like, I need to go with you,
Yeah.
which, I guess
Yeah. And so
if we're
she
gonna
agrees to that.
get the
She's like, "You're
plague,
right.
we'll go together.
That's fair. Like, we'll do that." But then she starts feeling kind of tired
And
and
it's
she's
like
sleeping
2
all the
weeks
time.
of them just of her being like, I mean, I feel okay, but in the afternoon I'm tired and I get like cranky and I get and
And
then
what she got, friends, was typhoid, just like her dead husband. So that's super fun times for everyone.
yeah.
And
And it lasts for
it's
weeks and weeks and weeks.
horrible.
And so
He
she's
is a disaster. Like,
yeah.
he doesn't know what he can't do anything about it. That's the problem for him. He's like impotent as far as like helping her, and it makes him crazy.
He also says that, like, the thing that sucks the most is that she'll have these moments of being lucid and telling him, like, "Oh, it'll be okay. I'll be better. It's fine."
And
And
the
then she
next
gets sick
day she'll be a
again.
mess again. Yeah.
So she's, like, almost dead.
Yeah.
And,
Like full on
Raven
death rattle.
well, Ravenhill
And
comes to visit and he tells him, like, "You should call the doctor. She's about to, like"
yeah,
she doesn't look as bad as George did, but she's about to go through, like, the thick of
like
it.
we're coming to the end here either way. Yeah.
And the doctor and when everyone comes in there, he's kind of like, the best thing I could do, like the treatments that I have, or will probably just make it worse. The best thing that I can offer you is that I can give her something to make her passing like
Easier.
softer and
Yeah.
easier. And he is like, get out.
He's like, everybody get out. And he like gets on the bed and he hugs her. And meanwhile, we switch to her POV, and all of a sudden she's feeling great. And she's in this like beautiful garden, and everything is like nice. And who should walk up and talk to her but George, her dead husband?
Also, she's like, George looks really young and like a big
Yeah. And
baby.
she's like, he looks
So
so great. Because of course he looked bad when last time she saw him too, when
but
he was
she
dying.
also it's like he looks great, but also she's like, I forgot how young he looked. Like, so it's kind of and he's like, come with me, we'll frolic. I'll show you even nicer places. And
And
she's like, I
she's
don't know.
like, "Oh, no, I can't go. Like, I'm sorry, like, I love you, I'll never forget about you, but, like, I have another love in my life now and our daughter, and, like, I'm not going anywhere." And he's like, "Oh, okay, you're not ready. Like, I get it. Like, so you gotta suffer some more though," basically, and she's
And
like,
she's
"I
like,
mean,
sure,
okay."
that's fine. So she
And
wakes
so,
up and here's Zachary Bronson like, you better not leave
"You
me.
better
And
not leave me."
she's like,
And
okay.
she's like, "Okay, I won't." And, and that's pretty much the end, and then we get the epilogue, which is like, what they say, like 8
Like
weeks
3
later or
months
something?
later. Oh, 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks
Yeah,
later.
6 or 8 weeks later, and they're outside flying a kite, her and Rose, and she, like, falls over because Rose and her get, like, tangled up, and he comes, like, running out of the house, like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Oh my god, yes, it's fine, everything's fine," and of course, she's, like, fully back to healthy again, and he has not, like, touched her, like, he is very freaked
He's
out
so
about
scared.
amorous activities, and she's like, "This isn't gonna work for me." So,
So he comes home from work one day real tired and he's like, "It's too bad I can't do the sex. That's my favorite way to like release my tension." And everyone's gone. And
everyone
there's
is
like a
gone.
trail of roses to the
Yep.
bedroom. And she is like, "What
And
are you
she's
gonna
wearing
have?
this,
Dinner
like,
or wine?"
very sexy nightie, and she's like, "Hi, this is happening, so, like, get on board," basically,
And he
and
is like,
he
"Okay."
finally does, and then afterward, he's like, you witch, like, you knew I wanted to wait longer to do this." She's like, "Oh, I know, that's why I did this, like, we're done waiting, like, we've waited enough."
Yeah. But it's funny in the field, she was like, "I never thought it'd be so hard. I'm gonna have to seduce this man." And it
Right,
was
like,
like,
"This man is hard to seduce?" Like, since never. Like, what?
oh, but
Oh,
now they can
Zachary.
live happily ever after
Yes, for
with
real.
their typhoid antibodies
Oh
and
my lord, no kidding. So, yes, that is the end of this story, and, we had a lot of fun reading it. It's very old school, a lot of head hopping, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that next week when we talk to Harper St. George about this story. She read it as well, and we're gonna chat with her about it, so we'll see you then.
See you then.